The man in charge at the Republican National Committee wants Donald Trump to lay off and stop stoking all these fires about rigging and fixing when he claims these are the rules and you screwed it up. Welcome to the continuing war that will hit the floor in Cleveland. As we speak, we are unable to confirm that the Republican convention will go down in history as the first zombie candidate election process. Because last time we checked, Marco Rubio was out. Of course, in politics, no one ever really goes away, do they? If there's one issue plenty of people in at least two administrations would like to go away, it's what is actually in top secret pages that would seem to indicate Saudi Arabia had a lot more to do with 9/11 than anyone cares to admit. It would seem that veil is about to be lifted. And let us rip the lid off all these discourses about a contested convention. Someone has to ask the question, what are you so afraid of? And I'm just the guy to do it in telling it like it is. Bring it on. Question everything. I'm Ed Berliner. This is The Hardline for Wednesday, April 13th, 2016.
Behind these doors in the U.S. Capitol is a vault that contains one of the most secret and sensitive documents in the United States. 28 pages that could shed light on the events of 9/11. They've been seen by very few people, and you'll hear from some of them.
I think it is implausible to believe that 19 people, most of whom didn't speak English, could have carried out such a complicated task without some support from within the United States.
And you believe that the 28 pages are crucial to this?
I think they are a key part.
Naysayers, truthers, independent investigators, government agents, and the gal at the local bar have plenty in common when it comes to what really happened leading up to and the day the Twin Towers fell, the Pentagon was slammed, and people died in a Pennsylvania field. Fact and fiction have merged at the intersection of Saudi Arabia, and that nagging question, what role their government played in the planning and the execution of. 15 years later, we could be on the verge of finding out, or we could be about to discover no one still really knows, or those in power still prefer we never know the truth. There's a lot of selections here. Answers up. Let's go ahead and welcome back former CIA analyst Lisa Ruth, who keeps her ear to the ground all the time when it comes to these issues and so much more, because we have Syria to talk about, we have Afghanistan to talk about, we have ISIS to talk about, but let's go ahead and start right here. When 60 Minutes aired the report this past Sunday and talked about the 28 pages with redacted information, I watched it, as did many people, and said, wait a minute, we've known this. This is nothing really new here. This has been sitting here. So why is it all of a sudden, and even the president now is involved because we might know in 60 days what's underneath that redacted columns here and all those colorings, if you will. But why now? Why is this all popping up?
Yeah, and that's one question, why now? My next question is what next? Because as you said, we've all known about Saudi Arabia. I mean, this has been out there for a long time. If this is going to take things to a level that we're not expecting, what does that mean for the United States and for relations with Saudi Arabia? Where can this go?
Well, when you say that we've known, let's just dig into that, because especially in the CIA and all the analysts, right from the moment that the Twin Towers fell, it was almost as if the next day you heard the rumbles from people saying, well, these individuals were Saudis for the most part, so why don't we investigate there and start there? Has anybody ever come up with a decent answer why we didn't start there?
No, it's your Facebook posting. It's complicated. It's like, it's the same thing. The relationship is complicated, and that's the reason. And as ISIS and other terrorist groups appear and we really need Saudi Arabia, it becomes very, very complicated. It's the same reason we don't go after the Saudis for massive human rights abuses, though, really. I mean, we have to have somebody in the Middle East. The Saudis are our allies. They're the brother that we don't want to look at, but they are there. And I really am not sure how far the U.S. is willing to go, even if there is direct damning evidence. Because this has been there. Policymakers know this. You and I know this. What are we missing?
The thing that seems to be coming up here, the more I dig a little more into this, is they're talking about the possible connection between the Bush administration and Saudi Arabia, and that they were in bed together and they were friendly. All right, if that comes out on the 28 pages, I get this. But the Bush administration, the prior Bush administration, the Clinton administration, the Carter administration, how far back do we have to go? Because we have been in bed with the Saudis for a long time. We can't stick it to them. No matter how bad it is, wouldn't you almost have to have, in many ways, the smoking gun in the Saudis' hands, and you'd have to have bomb residue on somebody's hands in the royal family to be able to really get anywhere here?
Well, and keep in mind what we do know, the non-redacted parts, that is not going to happen. Tell you right now.
Right.
What they have come out and said, the high-level officials are not involved. The problem really for me as an analyst is we do know that much of the funding came from Saudi Arabia. We know that a lot
But from
of
the government or from people in and
Yes
around
and
the government?
yes.
Do we know? Okay,
yes
there.
and yes. And the problem, though, again, you're talking about where those lines are. And if the government allows it or just looks the other way. But either way, they're not cracking down. But it does get into a lot of problems because we also know that Saudi Arabia has funded ISIS initially. It funds Al-Qaeda. You know, where is the line? And until we're prepared to crack down on those financial transactions, we are going to continue to have Saudi
Which we
Arabia.
never will.
Which
we never will.
not.
We're too deep in bed with the Saudis right now. We can't get out.
And back to your point, this is not this administration or the last administration. This is administrations for a very, very long time and going forward as well. This is not going to change.
You mentioned Al-Qaeda, and now we have Al-Qaeda back. And here again, something else I read this morning, Lisa, and I'm looking into it, and it says, Al-Qaeda is back in Afghanistan. Wait a minute, they never left.
Absolutely not. Never left. And I saw the same story. It's shocking to me how you can even have that as a headline or a bit of information, because we know Al-Qaeda has been there. We know ISIS is there now. We know that people who used to be Al-Qaeda are now ISIS. It's the same groups are also there. They never left Afghanistan. We never eradicated them. They have gone into hiding, but they have been there and they are still there.
I want you to go right back to what you said, because that's something that very few people talk about. You mentioned Al-Qaeda and you mentioned ISIS. It would seem that as you watch these groups, anybody with half a brain cell would be able to see that, okay, Al-Qaeda's out of Afghanistan. Well, guess what? ISIS moves in. A lot of it is the same people. All they're doing is, it's like a bad team. They're trading uniforms because they want to stay in the game.
That's a great analogy. And you can add a third player, and that is Taliban. We know that some of the Taliban has also been on the Al-Qaeda side and on the ISIS side. ISIS, we know that a lot of the leadership in ISIS is former Taliban and is former Al-Qaeda. They are the same people. It's just that ISIS right now has money and funding. Well, money is funding and weapons, and they're looking around and seeing who to ally with. But these are the same people. They have never been gone. They're extremists, they're terrorists, and they are there.
I'll try and get positive here for a minute. Let's just say that this report, okay, Al-Qaeda is back in Afghanistan. Smaller role, however, not necessarily as big as they were. They have been affected. More have gone to ISIS, the Taliban. We've killed a lot of these people. So is it possible that when the report comes out and we look at it, they're there, but I'm trying really hard to be positive here. We've got a handle on where they are, and it won't get out of hand like it did again. Boy, I'm stretching this one too far.
Yeah, you are. You know,
okay,
again,
good. Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
We joke. I'd love to be out of business here talking about terrorists. I really would. Nothing would make me happier than to teach it only in a history course. But what you have is a terrorist organization capable of carrying out attacks. So what does that mean? Does that mean if we have 5 that we're safe, we have 3, we have 12, we have 27? It's just ridiculous to say. And even if we know where they are, that's very different than being able to disrupt them and stop a terrorist attack from happening. It's just not going to happen. You're also talking about a government that is not really in control still. There's a vacuum there. There's the security services have not demonstrated an ability to keep a lid on things. It's not a good situation.
Here comes the next situation. The Wall Street Journal this morning, the headline, U.S. readies Plan B to arm Syrian rebels. I see Plan B and I think, all right, Plan A we knew wasn't going to work in the first place, but now we're arming Syrian rebels again. I swear to you, all we have to do is just, let's arm this group, let's arm this group, let's go to the next one, let's try this one, let's do this one. Let's see what works, kids, because, gee, maybe we'll go back to Vietnam, we'll rewrite history all over again, and maybe something will work for a change. What is this?
What it is a quagmire. That's what it is. This is really... When you're looking at Syria again today, and the same thing, when I saw this headline, I thought, is this an old story? This can't be right. Here we are trying to have peace talks, and yet we're arming the rebels again. So even that, we're undercutting our own peace process here. But we still are doing things that don't make sense. Arming these rebels is not solving anything. We're actually contributing to the situation, the negative situation inside Syria. We don't know who these rebels are. We still don't. They're highly fractured. It's a plan that I just don't understand. I mean, I almost don't even know how to talk about it.
Then why are we doing this then? I mean, who's the person pulling the trigger on another ridiculous plan that hasn't worked before? It's got to be the Obama administration.
I guess, but whoever their advisors are, I seriously question.
Are idiots.
I don't know. Again, I have a lot of chatter with my friends across the world. I don't know any of them in the intelligence community who are saying, you know what we really need to do is arm the rebels. That's really what we need to do. That's not happening. I mean, I need to be very clear. Intelligence professionals are not behind this. This is a bad plan. I don't know where it's coming from, but I do know, rather than de-escalating things or even what better positioning U.S. interests in Syria, this is going to be another disaster.
And
I guarantee it.
Are we not just putting weapons in the hands of rebels who may once again, in 5 years, 10 years, 12 years, whatever it is, 12 minutes, may turn against us one of these days, and these same weapons will be used to kill Americans?
To your point, maybe not even them. They have given them to al-Nusra, they've given them to ISIS. So even if they personally aren't, the weapons conveniently find themselves in the hands of people who oppose us.
We always seem to be professional gun runners, more than anybody else, which it seems to be, and we keep picking the wrong sides.
Again, the policy doesn't make sense to me, and I don't know anybody it does make sense to.
And then all we have to do is you and I then have to read these things. We have to come here. We try and make sense of it. But I feel like what we've just done here is we've not been able to make any sense of it. Because quite frankly, there is no sense. It's always a pleasure to see you, Lisa. Thanks so much for being here. It's good to talk a little common sense for a change. Trust me on this one. All right. Now, from one who has been on the inside of campaign policy decisions, why the GOP cannot be concerned about policy while they're basically looking to save their political bacon. And they're all looking to get to Cleveland without having any kind of a fight. But they're going to have one of those. It just goes on and on. Join us next on The Hard Line.